Hi, so this is Mr. Hem again. In the last few videos, we went through double buffering and we were setting up the game loop to work with our double buffering. In this video, I want to set up basically the flow of our game, the game load, the game update, and the game draw in that. And that's how kind of a game works. I can explain to you briefly. So if I pull up a little document here. So kind of the way we're going to set up our game architecture is when the game loads, we want to have some kind of when the game loads, we want to have a place where we load things, we load all of our assets, and do our setup before the game, before we play the game, and that's the first thing that wants to get done. And after that gets done, then what happens is it goes into the game loop, right? The game loop. And we're going to have two things in our game loop. Right? We're going to separate two things. And in some architectures, you don't have to, you may not separate it, but we will. We're going to have two things. We're going to have game update, some kind of game update, yeah. And then after we do an update. An update would be like an object moving positions, or color change, or some kind of behavioral aspect that isn't related to visuals, behavioral aspects. So it's kind of like behavior. And then after an update gets done, it will then draw the new positions of in whatever alpha, whatever alpha it is. So it will do a draw, so some kind of draw. And then what happens is it comes back to this, and then you kind of got your game loop going on there. You're just looping along there. This is where you do your painting, your graphic stuff, and that's kind of the flow. And this doesn't happen again unless you might want to do this again when you load a new scene or something like that, right? But so this kind of happens once. Then this loop goes around and around forever until you end the game. All right, so let's set that up. So the first thing that happens in our form is all of this stuff. So we can hook up our game load here. So we can call our game load here, and what I'll do is I'll abstract it. So we don't actually want to program in here and have to look at this every time. So what we do is we can go private sub game load, draw kind of a little subroutine for ourselves there, so we can do all our programming there, and then we just call our game. Did I write game loop there? No, game load, and then we can just call our game load here. And then what we can do now is, if we're happy with all of this setup here, it does all the setup, then it loads this thing which is in here. We can now kind of hide this, and we only need to worry about what's in here that's game related. Even though it's in our form load, in a sense, it happens in our form load, but we kind of abstract from it. We don't have to worry about having to look at all this code. We can kind of put this code together in its little region and not have to worry about it, and only worry about making the game framework here. So when this thing happens, which is our game load, we really should be doing this before we enable our timer. So really I should put the game loop before we enable the timer. It should load our game first and then start the timer, which is starting our game loop. So this is kind of where we start our game loop. And in our game loop, we're going to have this game loop here. What I'll do is I'll shift this over, because we don't need to touch our game loop anymore. Or not yet, we'll need to still touch it. So this game loop here does our draw. So this is the draw part. It does this. We need a game update. So what we'll do is we need to add a game update. And normally in a game update you have some kind of timing, but we won't put any timers and frame rates and all that to sync everything together, but we won't do that. That just complicates it. And this is just for demonstrative educational purposes. We won't need that. And of course, this thing gets drawn, this thing gets pulled out when this thing occurs. When this thing occurs, this thing is occurring, but this is not occurring at all. So we need to hook that up to our game loop. And generally we want to do our game update. Or that's right, we want to do a game update before we want to do a game draw. This is where our game draw occurs. Game update, private sub. Game update. What am I? Can't spell. So this thing happens. So this thing loads. The timer starts, which is hooked to this. Then this thing starts. Then this thing happens, and then this thing happens, and then this thing happens again. This thing happens. So that's kind of the loop. And this thing is the game update here, and this is bound to this from up here, where we bound the paint to our game draw. So we're just abstracting. The word abstract basically means kind of just, you know, getting rid of the complexity. So we'll get rid of all the complexity here. And now we've got our 3 kind of places that we can program our game in, right? And you know what, even better, I might just hide this whole region using a region. I'll just go region and just go game window setup. And if anything that we need to set up for our game window, we'll go back into here. Else, we're just going to collapse this in region. We're just going to collapse this. See, this thing comes up and now it's gone. It's not gone, it's just, you don't see it. You know what? All of this stuff should be in our game, our setup as well. We'll just shove that all into there. And we'll just you know, hide everything. So now our game framework is nice and compact. These are our 3 spaces that we'll work with. This is logic based. This is our game update. So anything logic based, we should really put in here. Anything draw based, where we're using draw, we'll put into here. Any kind of asset loading or setting a value, you know, you could create X there and then set the X, starting X value to be X equals 100. Then you do some kind of update on X every frame. And this is occurring. Remember, this thing is occurring. These 2 things are occurring every 16 milliseconds. Because that's what we set it to. So if you want this to be faster, go into our game window, go into our form load, and change your refresh timer to even faster frame rate, right? But I'll keep it at 60 frames per second I'm happy with for now, for this particular game. Close to. And there you go. That's pretty much our flow. Let's have a look at our time. All right. So since we set that up, what I want to do in the next few videos to kind of get you started is just show you some of the ways we could draw graphics, and also do a bit of animation on how to, and just explain a little bit more about what's happening here. So I'll see you in the next video.